Hey everyone, welcome back. Today, I'm going to tell you a really cool story from way back in history, the famous Battle of Brunanburh. But before we get to the big fight, let's talk about the guy in charge at the time, Aethelstan. Aethelstan was born in the year 894, when his grandpa, Alfred the Great, was one of the most powerful kings around. Alfred was famous for beating the Vikings and protecting his kingdom of Wessex. Alfred and his son, Edward the Elder, worked hard to take back land from the Vikings. By the time Aethelstan became king in 924, he was already in charge of most of England south of a river called the Humber. But Aethelstan didn't just sit around enjoying his power. Like his grandpa, he was very religious, smart, and tough in battle. As a young man, he had already fought many Viking enemies. One of his first big choices as king came in 926. He wanted peace with his rival, Sitric of York. Aethelstan let his sister marry Sitric, and even helped him become a Christian. But Sitric didn't really stick with it. He went back to his old ways and died the next year. Then Sitric's brother, Guthfrithson, the king of Dublin, rushed over from Ireland to try and take over York. But Aethelstan got there first. He took control of York before Guthfrithson could even show up. After that, Aethelstan wanted even more. In 927, he met with the kings of Scotland, Strathclyde and Northumberland at a place called Amont Bridge. All of them agreed to follow Aethelstan and promised to be loyal. This moment was super important. It was the first time someone really ruled all of England. His people started calling him the Thunderbolt, because he moved fast and hit hard. He even began calling himself the King of all Britain. But not everyone was happy about that. One of those kings was Constantine II of Scotland. He had already made a name for himself by fighting off Viking attacks. His grandpa had brought the Scots together, but his dad wasn't very memorable. Constantine had been watching Aethelstan get stronger for years. At first, they were allies against the Vikings. But once Aethelstan took York and started acting like a boss, Constantine didn't like it anymore. He saw Aethelstan as a threat. In 933, Constantine broke his promise to Aethelstan. So Aethelstan led an army into Scotland and attacked. Constantine had no choice but to say sorry and follow Aethelstan again. He even had to go to meetings in England as a lesser king. It was super embarrassing for him. When he got back to Scotland, he was angry and wanted payback. But he knew he couldn't beat Aethelstan alone. So he started looking for friends who also didn't like the English king. One of those friends was Owain, the king of Strathclyde. His small kingdom was along the west coast, from the Lake District up to the River Clyde. Owain wasn't happy with how Aethelstan treated his kingdom, and he wanted to break free too. But the person who wanted revenge the most was Olaf Guthfrithson. He was the son of Guthfrithson of Dublin, the same guy who tried to take York before. Years ago, Aethelstan had taken York from Olaf's family. Olaf came from a Viking family known as the Ivorids. They were the descendants of Ivar the Boneless, a famous Viking warrior. The Ivorids had ruled parts of the sea between Ireland and Britain, places like Dublin, the Isle of Man, and York. Losing York really hurt Olaf. His dad was known for being a tough and cruel king, and Olaf was just like him. When he became king of Dublin in 934, he started attacking other Irish kings and even destroyed churches. In 937, after beating another Viking rival named Olaf Scabbyhead, yes, that was his real nickname, Olaf Guthfrithson, turned his focus to Britain. He had built up a strong army and had lots of Viking supporters from the Hebrides and along the Irish coast. He wanted York back, and he wasn't coming quietly. Olaf teamed up with Constantine. Even though their people had been enemies and believed in different gods, they both wanted to stop Aethelstan. For Constantine, if the Vikings ruled York again, it would protect Scotland from English attacks. For Olaf, it was about getting back what his family had lost. And now it was late summer in the year 937. After making secret plans, a powerful group made up of Vikings, Scots, and Britons came together and invaded England. King Aethelstan wasn't ready. The invaders entered northern England and started attacking villages without much resistance. Aethelstan was down south when he got the news. He quickly gathered his army from the southern and middle parts of England and marched north. But he had a big problem. His army was smaller than the enemy's huge combined force. There's an old Viking story called Eagle's Saga that says Aethelstan used a clever trick. He told his men to set up extra tents to make his army look bigger. When Olaf's messengers showed up, Aethelstan's soldiers stood outside the tents like there was no space inside. It was all an act to fool the enemy into thinking the English army was much larger. While Aethelstan waited for more soldiers to join him, he started peace talks with Olaf, the Viking leader. He offered Olaf money to leave. Olaf didn't say yes, but he didn't say no either. He just kept asking for more, trying to get a better deal. This went back and forth for over a week. But then Aethelstan's reinforcements arrived, and now both armies were about the same size. That's when Aethelstan stopped being polite. No more money offers. He told Olaf to pay for the damage he had done, and to accept Aethelstan as his ruler. If not, they'd settle things in battle. One of Olaf's earls figured it out. They'd been tricked. The English had used the peace talks to stall until their full army was ready. Olaf ended the negotiations and prepared for battle the next morning. On a chilly morning in October, the two armies met at a place called Brunanburh. Fighters came from all over: Scotland, Ireland, Wessex, Mercia. Historians think each side had about 5,000 to 10,000 soldiers. Most of the men carried spears, axes, and shields. Wealthier warriors wore chainmail and metal helmets. The poorer ones had leather armor. The battlefield had a river on one side, hills and woods on the other, and open space in between. Aethelstan divided his army into two parts. He led the left side, which faced Olaf and the Vikings by the river. His younger brother Edmund led the right side, facing Constantine and the Scots. Olaf and Constantine made the first move. Their men formed a strong shield wall, standing shoulder to shoulder with shields locked together. The English did the same and shouted their battle cry, "Ut ut," which means out, out. Arrows, javelins, and rocks filled the air. Then the two sides crashed into each other. It turned into a long and brutal fight. Both sides pushed hard. Axes swung and spears jabbed through the gaps. Finally, as the sun began to go down, part of Olaf's shield wall fell apart. Maybe they were too tired or had lost too many men. That's when the English charged in. The mercenaries broke through the gap, and the fight became wild and bloody. Aethelstan was in the middle of it all. There's a story that says his sword broke during the battle, but then another one magically appeared in his scabbard. Some people believed it was a miracle. Olaf managed to escape back to his ships, but many of his top warriors were killed. A poem from that time says 5 young kings and 7 of Olaf's earls died. Constantine also ran away, but he lost his son Prince Seljuk in the fight. Aethelstan had won. The alliance was defeated, and he took back control of York. But the win came at a cost. His army was too tired and hurt to keep going into Scotland. He also lost family members, including 2 cousins who were later buried with respect at Malmesbury Abbey. Nobody knows for sure where Brunanburh was. Some think it was near the River Humber, based on an old story. Others believe it happened on the Wirral Peninsula, a place that had lots of Vikings and was easier to reach from Ireland and Scotland. There's even a town there called Bromburgh, which might be named after Brunanburh. But there's no solid proof either way. Just 2 years after the battle, Aethelstan died. His brother Edmund became king. That same year, Olaf came back and took over York again. For the next several years, York kept switching hands. Viking leaders, English kings, and even a Norwegian king, named Eric Bloodaxe, took turns ruling it. In 954, the people of York killed Eric and gave the city to the English once and for all. People didn't just remember Brunanburh as a big fight. It became a symbol of unity. For the first time, different English groups, like the Mercians and West Saxons, had fought together as one. If Aethelstan had lost, England's future might have looked very different. But he won, and that gave future kings a solid foundation, and the idea that ruling all of England, including the north, was their right.